All right, the trip flight free response question part B. We're getting the shortest layover between two flights. And so you can kind of see the description here that if there's only one flight, then you don't have any layover, right? So we talked about in the previous part A, the idea of a layover. Find the picture here quick. That's where you stop somewhere, but if you flew directly from New York to Bangkok, then you wouldn't have any layover, right? And in that case, if you only have one flight, then they want you to return -1, representing that there aren't any layovers. Okay. Otherwise, if there are multiple flights, then how you do a layover is you look at the difference between the arrival time of the like a current flight and then the departure time of the next one. So here you can see we arrive at 12:15 p.m. and we don't depart till 1:15. So that's a layover of 60 minutes. Next one arrives at 3:45 and takes off at 4. So that's 15-minute layover, the difference between those two times. So we're going to use that time one dot minutes until method, right? Definitely to do the difference between those two. And then we can see the last one arrives at 6:45 p.m. and doesn't depart till 10:15. So that's a 210-minute layover between those two times. So it's kind of like any other min one where we have to get these different layover amounts, right? In fact, I made a little method that says calculate the layover, and then you want to check if that layover is less than the minimum amount, then it is becomes the new min layover, all right? And then we want to return the smallest of all these layover ones. So that would be this one. So I kind of did, my approach was loop through, get the flight and the next one. So like this will be in, when you do the code here, this will be like flight I or something. And then this one down here will be flight I plus 1, right? So you're going to do flight I and then the next one. And then you want to do for flight I, you want to do the arrival time. Flight I plus 1, you want to do departure time. Then call that time 1 minutes until time 2, right? And then that's your layover number. And if that is smaller than the current smallest, then it becomes the new shortest layover, right? So we're going to loop, and we want to actually loop not less than the size, but one less than one less of the size, because we don't want to do flight 3 because it doesn't have another flight after that. So we're just going to loop, in this case, 0, 1, 2 for this particular example. Okay, let's see. So, notice here that we're returning an int, which is the shortest layover, and nothing's coming in. That's because our flights, again, are all in an array list. That's kind of a global variable. So if we look at the overall class here, we're going to be looping through this array list of flights, right? We're in this get shortest layover, and we're going to loop through that set of flights. Okay, so when I did this, the first thing I did was I thought I'm going to do an int the shortest layover and set that to be -1, and then just say, well, we're going to return that if there isn't any other layover. But then I kind of, when I was thinking about it, like we're going to have to check like if the current layover is less than the shortest layover, then the layover would become the new shortest layover. But nothing's ever going to be less than -1, right? This layover number is never going to be less than -1. So setting it up that way won't really work. So what I kind of thought to do then is just do an if. So we know that if there's 0 or 1 flights, then the shortest layover, there isn't one. So we return -1. So basically I would start with like if flights dot size is less than or equal to 1. So if we have 1 or 0 flights, then I just want to return -1. So that'll take out or handle the case of if there is basically no layovers, right? Then we return -1. So when we get to this else, we know that there's at least 2 flights. Okay, so now what I want to do is what I was talking about before. So now we could do like int shortest layover, and we could do integer. Let's see, I think we would do max. So if we did max, that would guarantee that the first layover would overwrite it because it would have to be less than that. So I'm going to do integer.max value. And then I'm going to do for int I equals 0, I less than flights Okay, and I'm going to do, instead of, that's what we normally do, right? This is our normal loop, but we don't want to hit every single flight because we don't, again, we don't need to do the last one because it doesn't have a subsequent flight coming, right? Again, visually, we don't want to go all the way up to 3 because there is no future flight for 3. All right, so we're going to go, instead of less than the size, we're going to go less than the size minus 1. And then we just have to get the 2 flights. So I would do flight, like the starting flight would be flights that get the one we're on, I, and then we're going to do flight. Maybe I should do this. I'll call this one the current flight. That might make more sense. And then the next flight would be flights that get I plus 1. Okay, so those are the 2 flights. And then we have to do like the layover time. Okay, and so you don't have to do it this way, but to me, this was a really good example of where I would want a little method that just says figure out the layover, right? So I could do something like int layover equals calculate layover, and then I could just pass in the current and the next flight, right? So if I have a little helper method here that can just calculate the layover for me, that'd be fantastic, right? And then I can say if the layover is less than the shortest layover, right, then it's going to become the new shortest layover. So shortest layover becomes whatever that short layover is right there. So it'll override it if it's the shortest. Okay, and so then all we really need is this helper method that calculates the layover, right? And what you do for that is you just get the arrival time of the first flight and the departure time for the second flight. Let's do that quick. So I'm going to do time because these are time objects, right? When you call like the get arrival time, that's just a time object, all right? And then time 2 will be the flight 2 dot get departure time. So we're going to, when does the first flight arrive, and we want to do the difference between that and when the second one departs. Okay, and so then I'm just going to return the T1 dot the minutes until T2. All right, so that would do return the minutes and int of the minutes between the difference between those times. So the difference between the arrival time and the departure time for these 2 flights. That's how you calculate the layover. So that'll get returned back up in here, and then it'll check to see if it is less than the shortest. So that's a little helper method. You don't have to do it that way. I like making little methods. I think it's easier to work with. Okay, so back up here. So in the if part, I already returned -1 if there's no layovers. But then here, once I'm done going through all the flights, looping through them all except the last one, once I've got all the layovers, then I want to return whatever was the shortest layover. And since there's more than one flight, it definitely won't be this. It'll be some layover number. In the example again we gave here, it would be 15 minutes. Right, but this should work. Let me know if you have any questions about it. This question is a lot about being able to understand this idea of objects, like the flight consists of 2 time objects, and this trip consists of a bunch of flight objects stored in an array list here. So it's good practice with array list, and then just how do you access the methods, right? And so, this description, understanding all this description here is probably pretty important. So please let me know if that did not make sense. All right, hope you all are doing well.